My name is Miguel Malo. I'm a senior economist at the International Institute for Labor Studies at the ILO, and formerly I was an associate professor at the University of Salamanca in Spain. My presentation was focused on job-friendly approaches as a way to move from the current austerity policies to a different approach to policy making in order to fight the main cost of the current strategies for policy making. I decided to focus more on policies and on the current debate about whether we should move to different policies, especially in the European Union and especially in the Eurozone. Well, now we have a very intense and even hot sometimes debate about persisting or not in austerity policies. For example, in the blog Vox EU, very well known by many people. If not, I recommend it. There is now an open debate directed by, coordinated by Giancarlo Corsetti, entitled "Has Gone Austerity Too Far?" And there we can find different posts by leader economists as Alberto Alesina, John van Reenen, etc., with the titles you can see here. The austerity question, how is as important as how much? This is by Alesina. Too early to sound the alarm by Manfred Neumann. The austerity debate make haste slowly, Carlo Cottarelli. Fiscal austerity and policy credibility. Fiscal consolidations. And this question is really good. Too much of a good thing, because I think that the debate now is centering in a much more interesting zone, trying to make some nuances to the previously black and white positions, trying to provide more interesting reasonings about why we have this type of policies and how we can move to different policies with lower cost, at least in the short term. Also, I would like to remark the participation of a very interesting academic researcher, Paul de Groot, with this post, with this title, so rhetoric, Panic-Driven Austerity. And of course, Bradford DeLong, with a very interesting blog, Contractionary Policy is Contractionary, denying the position of those as, for example, Alesina, that a contractive policy can increase confidence and then create the conditions for further expansion. And again, the spending cuts to improve confidence. And the answer by Bradford DeLong is, of course, no. The arithmetic goes the wrong way. But of course, there are other positions. As above you have seen, too early to sound the alarm, fiscal consolidation, too much of a good thing. But maybe John Taylor in the US is the most representative academic professor, providing arguments supporting a very relevant policy to decrease debt in the short term, and therefore promoting austerity policies. I think that to understand this debate, we have to go to the beginning of the crisis. At the beginning of the crisis, we were at the cliff of a disaster, as many people say. I remember these words by Nicolas Sarkozy about refounding capitalism. I remember these sort of things that today would be or would sound as extreme positions for many people. But then, when we were amidst all that mess, everybody wanted to expand the economy, and the most useful tool to do this is, of course, increasing expenditures, increasing public expenditure with the so-called stimulus policies. Well, in some countries, especially in developed countries and specifically in Europe, we had a bit later countries with higher levels of debt. So high in some countries that they experimented bailouts. They asked for additional funding from international sources because they were not able to cover their financial responsibilities. Well, as the corresponding policy to this situation was the implementation of different austerity policies, very extreme in some countries, especially in those under a bailout. Greece, Portugal, Ireland, and countries in the cliff of the bailout at least 1 year ago, as Italy, Spain, especially. I think that this debate about austerity policies must distinguish between two groups of countries. Countries controlling their exchange rate, as the United States or the United Kingdom, and high-debt countries with no control of their exchange rates, as, for example, the southern countries of the Eurozone. This is relevant because when you can't control your exchange rate, your debt is as if debt in a foreign currency. So you can't use the central bank to print more money in order to pay your national debt, which is the case with the US or the UK. In Spain, in Italy, Greece, etc., they can't use this possibility open to these other countries controlling their exchange rates. As the experience of many developing countries show, being indebted in a foreign currency is very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Because you don't have, in fact, you don't have a last resort lender. So if you don't have any other alternative, if you don't have any external funding, you have to accept any policy from those people providing funding. In the case of the countries of the south of Europe, accepting the policies from the European Commission, from the other countries of the Eurozone. Well, now what we have is that we have the cost. These policies are revealing the cost in the short term in terms mainly of employment and unemployment. And now people see directly in these countries, in these high indebted countries with no control of their exchange rates, the high cost in terms of low employment, high unemployment rate, an increase in poverty, and increasing risks of social exclusion. And all of this, people in these countries say it's related with these packages of austerity policies. Notice that even those arguing that austerity policies are needed for these countries, they accept that a problem of austerity policies is that the timing of costs and benefits are very unbalanced. The costs are very concentrated in the short term because they have to pay in terms of employment and unemployment in order to adjust and to obtain the fiscal adjustment of these countries in a short time, in a short period of time. But the benefits will come later, and later is the long term. So any incumbent politician should be very sensible to this timing of cost and benefits. Why? Because they have the risk to obtain the benefits in the next political term, after some political elections. So maybe the question is why these politicians are persisting in this type of policies with high cost for population in the short term and with expected benefits in the long term so long that maybe these benefits are beyond political elections. Okay? And the question then is why we don't see more countries adopting a job-friendly policy now. Because if a job-friendly policy is so good as many international organizations say, the ILO, for example, or the OECD, or many experts, Bradford DeLong, Krugman, Stiglitz, you know, all these very, very smart people. Then why we are trying to create the intellectual environment to implement these policies, and we don't have these policies? Well, of course, the first explanation would be politicians are crazy, they don't want to hear anything from academia. We want real explanations, and not only these claims for culprits in the policy world. I think that the explanation is on how these policies are implemented and how even good politicians persist in austerity policies with very high costs in the short term for their populations. First, politicians are not only affected by the expected vote, they are also affected by core supporters, as Robinson and Torvik call them. In our case, in the Eurozone, these core supporters would be international investors, international agreements, international agreements as the Eurozone, understanding the Eurozone as an institutional agreement between different countries with mandatory decisions for their members. And of course, I think that it's very important in the case of the Eurozone, the probability, at least in sometimes, for example, around last year, the last summer for Spain and Italy, of a sort of catastrophic event. A catastrophic event as breaking the euro in a very rapid and discontinuous way. Well, if all these circumstances are present, a good politician, good in terms that seeking for the welfare of their population, would try to elude any catastrophic event and to obtain additional funding to cover the financial needs of the country. Remember that these countries have a very relevant fiscal imbalance. So any country can live forever with a public deficit of 10%, for example. These levels of public deficit are not sustainable. And any good politicians know that they have to reduce these huge imbalances. Not to zero, necessarily, but they know that this is not sustainable in the long term. At the same time, politicians know the high cost of these policies. Even considering that sometimes they are accused to live in an ivory tower, they look at the TV, at least. They talk with journalists, and they know. They talk with experts, they talk with their cabinets, and they know these policies, these austerity policies, have high costs for the population. The problem is that politicians deviating from this behavior usually would be assimilated to growth politicians, to politicians not committed to balance their economies when facing these extreme macroeconomic imbalances. And they don't want to be mixed with these other politicians, because being mixed, being assimilated to this other type of politician, mean for them not obtaining additional funding for the country, having additional restrictions when there are negotiations with other countries in these international agreements of in the Eurozone, for example, and so on. So politicians, especially good politicians, have a relevant incentive to persist in austerity policies, even considering that these politicians know that a job-friendly strategy and an implementation of job-friendly policies would lead to lower costs for their populations in the short term. Right? So how can we move to job-friendly policies? How can we implement these other type of policies with lower costs in the short term? Well, we had different country experiences, especially in the developing world. Always we have to think that there is heterogeneity in the world. World is heterogeneous by definition of the world, and by definition not elective. But maybe we should go beyond specific measures. A job-friendly approach, job-friendly policies must be useful for these politicians as a menu of measures inside a different policy making. I mean, a hard job-friendly approach would be considering employment as a macro objective at the same level of the other macro objective, as inflation, public deficit, and so on. But again, how to do it? If these politicians don't want to be mixed, don't be assimilated with the other rough politicians, what can we do? Well, we have to support credible job-friendly policies. And we say we, I mean international organizations. International organizations as the ILO, the OECD, the IMF, should have a very important role, a key role, from my own point of view, supporting the move to a different strategy, supporting job-friendly policies, and giving a sort of certificate that these politicians are not populist, are not deviating in the long term of the commitment for the solution of the macroeconomic imbalances, in the case of the Eurozone, decreasing the public deficit to sustainable figures. So, a different calendar, the implementation of measures as changing public expenditure towards a more job-friendly structure, showing that not only the figures are relevant, but how these figures are reached, not only reaching the 3% of public deficit, but how. All these things must be monitored and certificated by international organizations, providing this support, this credibility for this politician trying to implement a job-friendly policy. As you know, it's the classical problem of having a cooperative solution and a non-cooperative solution, and how to implement the cooperative solution from the non-cooperative solution. This is the typical problem of international coordination, for example, in monetary policies, or, for example, in exchange rate wars. All of us know that we want the cooperative solution, that we don't want the non-cooperative solution, but the problem is how to move to the cooperative solution and being there. The classical solution for this problem is providing a credible commitment with a cooperative solution. So I think we should move to this type of coordination of policies. Of course, the ILO promotes and strengthens of institutions, especially the social dialogue. The social dialogue has been unsuccessful in a lot of countries during the Great Recession. So probably what we need is new rules for this social dialogue between employers, organizations, and trade unions, and even more organizations, because now we have a more heterogeneous labor force than 20, 30, 40 years ago. So we need a wider social dialogue in order to include all these groups of workers not traditionally included in trade unions, and also expanding the social dialogue on the side of employers, going to also self-employed workers who are in this mixed terrain between workers and firms, because they are the smallest firm in the world with one worker, self-employed, only one worker. But he's also the boss, of course. So it's maybe the nexus between workers and employers. So I think that social dialogue could be a very important arena to obtain new agreements and the implementation of credible changes, trying to facilitate the implementation of job-friendly policies. Thank you very much.